Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
Let's give the audience and the listeners a little bit about Nate. Because Nate's behind the camera and they don't ever get to see him.
I know. He's even more behind the scenes than me.
That's right. He's more mysterious than Satya.
Yeah.
Okay, what's something about Nate that you find to be extremely endearing?
There are a lot of things about Nate that are very endearing. But I think my favorite is just that, like, Nate is someone that you can always count on to just have a good vibe. Like, I am not a person you can count on to have a good vibe. So I extra appreciate it about Nate. But just he enters any room with like a happy attitude. He's bopping to the music. He's game to do anything. Obviously, Nate has a huge workload, and so he's always got a lot going on, but he never like brings that stress to his environment, unlike myself.
I also appreciate his positive, peppy attitude, especially on days where Satya is on the other end of the spectrum. I'm just like, okay, we got it.
I'm the Peanuts character with like the cloud over their head.
Doesn't happen often.
It happens occasionally.
Okay, sorry.
No, I have my own. I have plenty of my own days like that too. Okay, couple things Nate does that I find awesome. When we're rolling on film, I think every videographer has a different like saying.
Uh-huh.
Nate says we Gucci. When we're good to go. It's like, we're good? No, we're Gucci. That's pretty funny. And then Nate, when we're training and filming, Nate, I just know that he's like itching to get in on the working out. So he puts away a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
Without ever being asked and without any expectation that he's going to put equipment away. But it's not bad to like finish a set of snatches and then like suddenly the barbell's gone. Nate can also cold clean and deadlift quite a lot of weight.
I was gonna say, yeah.
He's running around with a camera and I'll be like done with my last set and I'm like over there feeling bad about myself because I'm so exhausted, and he just steps up to the bar and he's like, man, let me see if I can power clean this, and just pop.
Yeah, no warm up.
Yeah, no warm up. Nate's extremely athletic and just showcases it in the most random times.
I don't get to see it on.
Yeah.
And Nate loves a banana.
Yeah.
But not
the bananas.
But not any normal banana.
Not a ripe banana.
It needs to be like pretty much brown. Like if it's not brown, he's not opening it.
Okay, the best is like the brown banana in the baggie in the fridge.
Oh my gosh,
and you're always like, is anyone gonna eat that? And then you see him eating it.
Yeah, I would have chucked it like at least a week ago.
The one in that's gonna be different.
Yeah. Nate always has a massive amount of almonds on hand.
Yeah.
wherever he is. There's always some almonds around, and yeah, and then I'll leave it at that. But
yeah,
it's a little bit about Nate. Thank you for being here, Nate.
We love Nate.
You. Yeah. Okay, on to the topic of the day.
Okay.
Which comes from a podcast that I did recently where I got asked the question towards the end of the podcast after we had talked about some origin stories of functional bodybuilding. It was, well, what is the philosophy or the programming philosophy of functional bodybuilding? How do you approach program design? And that question could go on a million ways. I chose to go as general as possible and really define some key buckets of our programs. And I would argue for the category that we're in, which is servicing the general population for strength and conditioning. This means we're not taking the most call it in some cases broken, or the most deconditioned people that have never done any training. We're also not working necessarily with the highest performing athletes in sport and in the world. We're really working with somebody who maybe has some experience training, exercising, wants to build more confidence in themselves, and really wants to learn how to combine functional fitness with bodybuilding for functional and aesthetic purposes. And it just resonates with that concept of like, training shouldn't be, it's either this or that. It's like, I can do it all. And when I do it all, I feel amazing and I feel capable of everything. For that person and for that type of delivery of a workout, I would say this is how training should be structured across the board. So when someone's like, how do you build the perfect workout? You follow these steps. And it's interesting because I know a lot of people in the functional, I don't even want to call it, I guess you could call it the functional bodybuilding space, because there's a whole category that's being, that's out there now of, you see functional training next to bodybuilding on different creator platforms and different online training apps, and it's happening. And it's like, how do you build the perfect workout? Well, it's starting to become a trend. It's a theme, and I'd like to think that we had a big part in growing that trend and that theme, and we're still remain, very much at the leading edge of it. But this is how it should go. And so when someone says like, well, how should I coach my group classes? Like, this is how you should coach it. How should I be training? Like, I only got 3 days a week to train. This is how you should train. Like, hey, I want to like look good, move well. What should I do in the gym? This is what you should do in the gym. And it's really that simple. And complex. For all you people out there who think simplicity is not for you because you're advanced, then guess what?
Elite.
This can be complex too. So that's the topic.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
I feel great about that. I mean, especially given that it's so powerful just to be able to express very simply, hey, what are we about here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, then what we're about is, I think I already said the number, but it's really a 4-part process to training. And I'll name them, and then we'll go through them and talk about kind of what's the value to each.
Great.
But there's a section of training that's called preparation. There's a section of training that's called strength intensity. There's a section of training that we will term strength balance. And then finally, there is a section of training that's called conditioning. And this is a strength and conditioning model. And it's a model that has evolved from decades ago, when strength and conditioning were disciplines and aspects of your training that were performed separately. You did strength and you did conditioning. And they didn't usually happen in the same room or at the same time or even the same day. You might go run or do track workouts or do interval sprints, fartleks, and you might be going to the gym and lifting weights. Each of those may or may not have seen a preparation period, meaning a warm up or a specific prep to get the most out of your training. That also has evolved in the last couple decades, where there's been a lot of great strength conditioning coaches and people who have researched a lot, who have concluded that you get more out of training and you can have better outcomes when you prepare correctly. And so now, fast forward to today, and through one of the more recent fitness evolutions, which was CrossFit, we learned how these disciplines of strength training and energy system training or conditioning, how they overlap and how they can coexist inside of the same training session, inside of the same day, inside of the same 5-minute interval. It's not the only place that it's ever been investigated. Interval weight training was something that was investigated even prior to that. Jim Jones and his folks were doing things simultaneous to Greg Glassman in the early days of CrossFit, but it's just been probably, there's been more case studies and testing done in CrossFit than any other discipline or brand of fitness. So now here we are. It's like, okay, well, let's take everything that we've got and let's look at what does the end consumer typically want to do in terms of training dedication of time. It's like 45 minutes to an hour. Mm-hmm. It's not 3 hours of I'm going to go lift weights for 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to go and
go to the track.
Then I'm going to go to the track and then I'm going to run some sprints. And then I'm going to, that was the luxurious days of college sports. And now it's not that. Mm-hmm. Now it's how do I get all these benefits in one thing? Can you get benefits from just going and doing conditioning? Hell yeah. Can you get benefits from just going and doing strength training? Sure. Mm-hmm. And for some people, like choosing one over the other and just sticking to it is going to be right for you. There's a big growing population of people who want both and could benefit dramatically from both. Because if you really push it in your conditioning, if you're like a high level endurance athlete, or that's what you do, then, and that's all you do, then there's trade-offs. You're leaving something on the table from a strength and mobility perspective. But if you only strength train and you only work on Olympic weightlifting, you get super strong and super mobile and super, powerful, you're leaving something on the table in the conditioning side of things. So we don't have specialists in that, middle of the bell curve. We have generalists, people that are trying to optimize their health and fitness for life, not to be the best at the sport or the weightlifting or the fitness endeavor that they're doing. And that's where everything comes together. So again, what's the best way to design a workout? Preparation and strength intensity and strength balance and conditioning. And that conditioning, we're going to bias towards a mixed conditioning model where you're doing a little bit of cardio and strength and body weight movement together. That's what it looks like. And give me, I just look through a handful of programs on the internet. I'd be like, okay, this one's doing it right. Look, they're successful. This one's not following that model. They seem to not be getting the same results for people, and so this leads me to believe that we've been on the right track for quite some time. And where we've kind of ventured away from that, we've we kind of got a little off track, and it's time to bring it back towards these main core principles. These have always been present in functional bodybuilding programs. They were present in my programs before I called it functional bodybuilding, when I ran a group fitness facility. And they will be this way for a long time to come. And there were times where I added other little elements in, like I tried to add a fifth pillar and another thing, and yeah, they might have their place, but they're not the foundation, the bedrock of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. When you look at those programs and you think, that one's not going to be quite as successful, what are the things that stand out to you that might be some common elements of other types of programs?
Well, they're missing one or two of the things that I mentioned. Uh-huh. They lean heavily into strength intensity, and they lean heavily into conditioning intensively. So that's where those programs tend to do a great job in some areas, but miss the mark in other areas, which leads to overall imbalance down the road.
Yeah.
Because as I'll get into the description of each, there are places inside of training where you must push yourself and you must challenge yourself and you must reach levels of effort that are uncomfortable for the whole thing to work. Mm-hmm. But there are also key areas of the training where you don't want to do that, where you don't want to push yourself maximally, where you actually want to lean into a different feeling, which is like more of an exploratory feeling of movement and fitness, not a push myself as hard as I can, area of fitness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, the place of the 4 that I mentioned that makes the most sense for that is the strength intensity part. This is where we want to push ourselves hard. The second area where you do that is in conditioning. Conditioning is different though, because it's not 100% of the time we push this way. It's named strength intensity because that is a designated area of training where you're going to perform things at a high level of effort relative to your abilities. With conditioning, you might have some days that are high effort. You might have some days that are moderate effort. You may have some days that are low effort, but they all have a place and they're all going to serve a purpose for really developing your body's ability to complete a variety of different tasks in a variety of different time frames. If you want to go and hike for 3 hours with your family on Thanksgiving Day, that's going to be a low effort for a long time. You got to learn that skill and you have to practice it. If you want to go and, ski some pretty aggressive backcountry powder, that's going to be a leg crusher. You're going to really be getting after it. So you got to train something a little bit more intensely, right? So there's applications and different applications that happen within conditioning that require different levels of intensity. And when you ask the question, where are people missing the mark? It's training programs that really only deliver the hammer on the conditioning, never the alternative.
Great.
And now the other 2 areas that I've mentioned, the preparation and the strength balance. Places that miss the mark sometimes are often omitting the preparation aspect of training. They're not seeing the value of 10 minutes of focused warm-up, movement prep, dynamic stretching, exercise rehearsal, pre-fatigue, different words that we use. They don't see the value of that. And they think, well, this person only has 45 minutes. That's the easiest place to cut the workout out. Because the other areas that we mentioned have a bit more of a stress response on the body, which is what gets people to adapt, right? Most people are, when they warm up, their body's not adapting in the same way to the warm up. It's not like, hey, I did this warm up where I did a few, plank toe touches. And next time I came in, I was so much better at plank toe touches, right. Or after a month of progressive overloading my plank toe touches, I'm I'm
a plank toe touch rock star.
I got monster delts, right? It's got a different purpose.
Yeah.
And when people are wanting to go to the gym and they want a result, it's what's going to make your body adapt more? 5 sets of hard back squats or 5 sets of plank toe touches? The 5 sets of hard back squats is going to get the most neuroendocrine adaptation response in your body. But without the plank toe touches, and I know this is not a good example because I'm not using plank toe touches to warm up for back squats, but without adequate preparation for the back squat, that I'm not going to get the value, as much value from that. And I could also set myself up for pushing intensely when I'm not prepared, and therefore having a setback in training, an injury or some type of tweak that makes it so I can't back squat now for a little while.
Yeah.
Which then accomplishes nothing for the person in the middle of the bell curve.
Right.
Right. So it's almost like you can't have the intensity without the preparation. You can't have optimal intensity or this is going to sound weird, but healthy intensity without preparing for it. You can have kind of unpredictable intensity without preparation, but we want to have more predictable intensity by making sure we prepare. So that's another area that is being omitted from some of these other programs that are out there that I see.
Yeah.
And then probably the area that's really omitted or missed and not even acknowledged is this concept of strength balance.
Yes.
Strength balance is strength training, but we're going to use strength training for some of the other incredible benefits that strength training offers, other than challenging your muscles to grow in hypertrophy and your nervous system to get stronger and more efficient at lifting heavier weights, which is what people believe strength training is. You lift weights to build muscle, you lift weights to get stronger. And strength equates for most individuals to, I can lift more weight in an exercise, in the core exercises, the squat, deadlift, bench. But strength is also related to the range that your body has in different movement patterns. Can you touch your toes? No, I can't touch my toes. So at the range of motion of touching your toes, you have no strength because you can't even get there.
Right.
You're zero strong.
Yep.
In toe touching. Now, if we use weight training, we can effectively get you to touch your toes. We can build range of motion with strength more effectively than passive stretching. And then, guess what? You just touch your toes. Now you're a level 1 strength athlete touching your toes, right? Like, which then leads to you being able to do a 10-pound dumbbell toe touch. Now you're a 2, and okay, now you can Romanian deadlift 135 pounds down to your toes. Holy shit, you're a 10 out of 10, whatever. We just realize you're getting stronger in a way that is not how people define strength typically. Mm-hmm. So we're using resistance training to build a whole different category of strength, which is basically strength and length combined, or mobility. And this is a different approach, because when you train maximally, or you're training with that super high effort in a traditional strength training model, like with weights and lifting, let's say it's back squat. When you go and back squat at a high effort to really elicit that big stress response that's going to get everything to grow and to, remodel and to improve in terms of strength and muscle tissue, blah, blah, blah. Your brain knows, hey, I'm strongest in this position and I'm going to stick to this position. I'm not strong if I go lower in my squat, so that's not where I'm going. So inherent in the strength intensity section of training, people cut corners in their range of motion and their movement. And when you lift in strength intensity formats, you are supposed to lift to a level of intensity where you stop thinking about how you're moving, mm-hmm. and you just think about getting the weight to move.
Yeah.
Right. So we take some calculated risks there. We try and get people into good, safe positions. We choose circumstances that allow them to push safely and intensely. But then once we're done with that, and the example is like, I just back squatted 200 pounds for 3 reps. It was super intense and super hard. Now put that bar back on the rack, strip the weight down to 100 pounds, 50% of that. And now do another set of squats, but I want you to go 3 inches lower. Mm-hmm. And I want you to pause for 3 seconds at the bottom. And I want you to, when you're pausing, I want you to really drive your knees out wide. I want you to get your chest up. And you can suddenly do that. At 50% of what you just lifted maximally, you go and now you have half the amount of weight and you can move all totally differently.
Yes.
When you're moving totally differently like that, you're getting a whole different type of adaptation in your body. We need to do that more. This is just movement exploration. That's what it is. It's play. But because people don't play in life physically, we have to manufacture it in the gym. if you were out climbing trees and rolling on the ground and crawling underneath branches and, you know, doing all this stuff, and like basically, you know, you'd see like a rock formation, like how do I get up there and how do I get down, and you were just doing all that stuff, then you might be set. Like you don't need to do strength balance. You're already exploring your movement in the world. This is what people call like go and learn to play a new sport. Go and do like go apply your great. If you can do that, awesome. Most people are not. And even if you are, we can at least put in 10 to 15 minutes of strength balance movement play inside of the gym in a controlled setting to give you to let you practice things that, you know, we can manufacture that and let you practice these movements. Let's do a Cossack squat and really like forget about maximal lifting. Let's just get into these awesome positions and let's hold them and let's move a little slower and let's move a little faster and let's move side to side and front to back, and then also let's like, you know, when I squat 300 pounds, I'm not thinking like, okay, are my glutes firing? Are my quads firing? Are my, you know, am I balanced? Are my hips like, right? But if I drop the weight, if I go and do an isolation glute exercise, if I do an isolation quad exercise, if I work on some rotation, if I do some tib raises, if I do some like now I can start to play around with movement exploration in different joints and specific isolated positions. This is something that I don't want you looking at it as like, oh, I'm doing this exercise to grow my quads. Yeah. It's like, no, I'm doing this exercise to see what it feels like to explore movement with a bias on the quad. The knee over toe squat, also called the sissy squat, where you like kind of Michael Jackson up on your toes and then try and drop your knees down to the ground. That, I don't need you doing that intensely. I want you to do it. I want you to do it safely. I want you to explore that movement, and doing that on the same day as doing a heavy front squat for 5, 2 totally different adaptations that happen, and they need to happen. They should happen, because if you just do the intensity stuff over time, you're going to get short in your tissues. You're going to get tissue issues that are going to feel crappy. Shitty tissue issue. that was an Amir saying. That was an Amir saying. You got a shitty tissue issue. So we can explore and work through that stuff.
The other thing I think a lot about with strength balance versus strength intensity is that with strength intensity, we are typically limited to a certain few movements that we really, really push hard in. Yeah. You know, you've got your squat, your deadlift, your pull up, or your bench press, or whatever. There's just sort of these classic moves that people tend to really push hard on and overload and max out on. And that's what people typically think of as the meat of their workout. And so, like you said, there's just so much other opportunity to move that we can incorporate in the strength balance section that gets overlooked. And that's where we can start to break down how you move from side to side and the strength of your body front to back and the strength around different joints and your resilience when you're twisting and all of those things that add up. And I feel like the strength balance is what gives people that feeling that they can go into life and, hey, oh, my friends are playing pickleball and I just hopped in on a game and I felt so awesome and they were amazed.
Totally. Now it's also my like belief that any movement really can exist in a strength intensity format or a strength balance format. Yeah. There are certain movements that lend themselves well to strength intensity because they recruit bigger muscles, more muscles altogether. They move more joints of the body through bigger ranges of motion, you know, a squat versus a calf raise, right? Right. But the point is still that like you can approach a weight training exercise with these two different mentalities and you get very different outcomes. Yeah. The more we teach people those movements in strength balance, the more they now have access to them as potential movements that they can bring into the strength intensity. If you've been doing Z presses for a period of time in a strength balance format where it's like, Z press is a tough movement. It's not as straightforward as just a strict press.
Yeah. For anyone not familiar with the Z press, you're basically sitting on the ground with your legs in front of you, like an L.
Yeah. Your body's in kind of this L position and you're holding a barbell at your shoulders or dumbbells and you're pressing it straight over your head.
It's tough.
And how it becomes, why it's so demanding is that by sitting on the floor, now you've kind of lengthened your you're stretching, you're lengthening your hamstrings, the muscles along the back of your legs, which is now pulling on your pelvis and pulling your pelvis, many people, into like a outside of neutral, like sort of like you're kind of like the pelvis is like sort of spilling backwards. If your pelvis was a bowl, it's spilling back. And then you're trying to keep your chest and your torso up tall because you have to press this thing overhead, but everything's pulling you back. And so it's like demanding on your core, demanding on your quads, really demanding on the shoulders. Okay, but back to what I was saying, it's like you spend some time learning this movement, not doing it super intensely, but working on that sub-maximal weight, getting the positions down. And from there, what do? Oh, now I've learned it. Now I can push it a little harder. Now I can use it in my intensity. And why our intensity strength movements have a much broader scope than just the traditional squat, dead, bench, pull up. We like to incorporate a lot of other movements that we've taught people over time through our program to really get comfortable with.
Yeah.
So there you go. We've got the 4 sections. I think we really discussed the reason behind having each. And I think that the last part that I just want to come back to is this conditioning area. I mentioned this is a strength and conditioning model where we have strength and conditioning combined into our training protocol. I'm not opposed to people segmenting their training and doing strength training today and conditioning tomorrow and strength training in the morning and conditioning in the evening. If your lifestyle suits that, then great. And I don't think there is, there's certainly not any published evidence that suggests that one is better than the other, or that you're missing out because you're not doing it all in one session, or that you're missing out because you're not doing them in separate sessions. I do think that people like to say, hey, it's the best scenario is if you separate your cardio and your strength training by 2 hours. And, but I think we have to deal with like real people and real lives. And, I want the benefits of both because having great cardio is good. Having great strength is good. Having both is probably better, for Gen Pop. And we got an hour to get it in. So let's do it. So that conditioning piece at the end is something that we've also learned to use a bit more of a mixed approach to formatting and writing those programs, where it's like, and mixed being, it's not just get on the treadmill and run. It's not just get on the bike and run. It's get on the bike, swing a kettlebell, jump over a box, do some push-ups. Maybe we do that for 15 minutes. Maybe we do that for 2-minute intervals. Maybe we mix in something a little bit more complicated. Maybe we keep it even more simple where you just do run 100 meters, 10 push-ups, run 100 meters, 10 push-ups, and you do that for 5 minutes. But we're going to play around with mixed variations of that. And what we can do is in that section of training, which in most cases in our training programs would take 15 minutes of your time in the gym, we can incorporate movements in that complement the rest of your training.
Yeah.
It's like, by doing 15 minutes of conditioning, you do give up 15 minutes that you might have spent doing cable flies and bicep curls and a back accessory exercise or a quad extension. But if we can bring movements like that into your conditioning, then you're getting energetic training, meaning you're training your energy systems, you're training your ability to breathe and to move, to do work. And you're going to get some quad contractions in there.
Yep.
You're going to build up those quads.
Yeah.
You're going to build up those biceps. We're going to do some narrow grip ring rows, which are going to build the biceps. And you're going to do some long step walking lunges, which is going to build the quads up. And you're going to get on the rowing machine. And you're going to do that all together. Mm-hmm. And that's quads, biceps, breathing, boom, 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 12 minutes. Good. You got in some of that work that you were worried you were going to miss out on by killing your gains, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times people think just killing your gains means I'm spending all this time doing cardio. I could be over here spending time doing more reps.
Right.
It's like, well, it's not a this or that. It's
you
a
can
both.
have it all.
You can.
Yeah.
So that's it. Prep, strength intensity, strength balance, condition. And if you do that, this is where I might depart from like people be like, well, what about stretching? What about cooling down? I'm like, hey, if you did your strength balance really well, if you prepared really well, and you really used those 2 sections of training to move in ways that are, helping you expand your range of motion and get better, you don't need to spend 30 minutes, 20 minutes every day stretching and doing all this extra stuff. What your cool down is there for is to help you transition from the focused intensity section of your day, which is called training, back to life. That's what it's there for. And that's what it provides probably the most benefit. Taking 2 to 5 minutes after training to stretch your quads is not the thing that's going to suddenly magically make your quads, more like magically mobile.
Yeah.
What it's going to do is it's going to help you bring your heart rate down, bring your nervous system kind of energy down, get back into maybe a parasympathetic state. You're going to incorporate some breathing, and then okay, I'm ready to go about my day. I just finished the fight, which was my training session, and I'm ready to go back to work, ready to go back to the family, ready to go out with my friends, ready to go home and just watch Netflix, whatever.
Yeah.
That's what it's there for.
Yep. I'll add one more piece to the conditioning, which is that we love to include lots of different types of efforts. So instead of just being, we're just about building tons of volume so you have a great steady state cardio engine, we do that. And we might do some sprinting, and we might do some grinder stuff incorporating strength work. So there's a lot of skill in there to build and to explore as well, with learning how to breathe and move weights and move your body in different conditioning pacing settings.
Yeah. Great thought. Great final thought. And that goes hand in hand with how I sort of, what we said about what's missing out there is that maybe too many programs lean into the intensity, the super hard conditioning, but you're going to find yourself in lots of different circumstances in life, and you're going to want to have the ability to work on different, the different gears that you have inside of your body.
Yeah.
That's how we roll, and that's how you should roll,
Yeah.
and that's how you build the best workout possible.
Yeah. And if you want to give it a try, you can find lots of resources free and our paid programs at functional-bodybuilding.com.
Yep. And New Year's is right around the corner. I hope you all are getting geared up for an incredible 2023.
Absolutely.
See you next time.
See ya.